All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to try and demystify a pretty huge topic, cybersecurity. We're going to explore how organizations protect their digital worlds, and we'll use a pretty cool analogy to do it, defending a modern-day digital castle.
And that right there, that's the big question, isn't it? In a world where digital threats are everywhere, how can you ever know if you're actually safe? It's not enough to just build your walls and hope nobody attacks. You need a real strategy. So we're going to break that strategy down into 3 main parts.
So where do you even start? Well, you've got to think like the bad guys. This first part is all about being proactive, about finding the cracks and weak spots in your own armor before someone else with bad intentions finds them for you. It all begins with security testing. Think about it like this. You've built your castle, you've got guards, you've got alarms set up. Security testing is the process of walking that perimeter, jiggling the locks on the doors, and making absolutely sure those alarms go off when they're supposed to. It's a snapshot, right? A vital checkup to see how your defenses are holding up at that specific moment.
Now, one of the most powerful ways to test your defenses is something called a penetration test, or a pen test for short. This is where you actually hire a team of, good guy hackers to simulate a real attack on your systems. They don't just wing it, it's a 4-stage process. They plan, they gather info, they launch a controlled attack to find holes, and, this is the most important part, they give you a detailed report of every single weakness they found so you can go and fix it.
And you can run these tests in a few different ways depending on how much of a head start you give the testers. With a white box test, it's like you're just handing over the blueprints to the castle. For a gray box, maybe you give them a visitor's pass and some basic knowledge. But the black box test, that's the real challenge. They start with nothing, just like a real attacker would, standing outside the castle walls, trying to find a way.
Okay, but with all this testing, how do you make sure everyone's talking about the same thing? That's where standards come in. The Security Content Automation Protocol, or SCAP, is basically a set of tools that lets everyone speak the same language. For instance, CVE gives every single known vulnerability its own unique ID, like a serial number. This whole system just ensures that when one person talks about a risk, everyone else knows exactly what they mean.
Okay, so testing is how you find the holes in the wall. But you can't just test it once and walk away, right? A castle needs guards on duty 24/7. And that brings us to part 2, the Daily Digital Watch.
And that's the job of the SOC, the Security Operations Center. This is the command center, the nerve center of your digital castle. You've got a team of people whose entire job is to keep watch. They're constantly monitoring for threats, managing who gets access to what, responding the second an alarm goes off, and doing all the background maintenance to keep the defenses in top shape.
And a huge rule they live by is this thing called the principle of least privilege. It sounds complicated, but it's really simple. You wouldn't give the castle cook the keys to the royal treasury, right? Same idea. You only give people and programs the absolute minimum level of access they need to do their job, nothing more. It's a simple rule, but it dramatically limits the damage an attacker can do.
And right alongside that is the idea of separation of duties. This is all about making sure no single person has all the power or control over something really important. Like needing 2 different people with 2 different keys to open the treasure vault. It's a classic safety measure that prevents both fraud and just, simple, honest mistakes.
But what happens when the alarm bells do go off? When a threat actually gets through? Well, you don't panic. You have a playbook ready to go. That's the incident management process. It's a clear, rehearsed plan to move from preparing for an attack to detecting it, then quickly containing the threat so it can't spread, and finally, recovering and learning from what happened so it's less likely to happen again.
And in the middle of all that chaos, one detail is absolutely critical: the chain of custody. Think of it as a perfect, unbroken log of who touched a piece of digital evidence, when they touched it, and what they did with it. If that chain is broken, even for a second, the evidence can be thrown out, which can make it impossible to figure out what really happened or to take legal action.
Okay, so we've tested our walls, we've got guards on watch. But what if we could just build a stronger castle from the very beginning? That's our third and final piece, building security in from the ground up. The way we build software has totally changed over the years. We used to have these really rigid, step-by-step plans called waterfall. But now we've moved to much more flexible and collaborative approaches like Agile. And this is a huge deal for security, because instead of being an afterthought that you tack on at the end, security becomes part of the conversation from day one. And to help developers out, there's this incredible resource called the OWASP Top 10. You can literally think of it as a most wanted list for the most common and dangerous software bugs. By knowing what to look out for, things like injection attacks or broken authentication, developers can build defenses against them from the start. So these vulnerabilities never even make it out the door.
So how does a whole organization get better at this stuff? How do they go from being, kind of chaotic to being really good at building secure software? They use a roadmap, something like the capability maturity model. It gives them a path to follow, moving from messy and unpredictable all the way up to a state where they're constantly measuring their work and getting better. It's a journey to building more secure systems every single time.
So, we've talked about testing our defenses, we've talked about the daily watch, and we've talked about building security in from the start. But here's the real secret. It's not about doing any one of these things well. It's about how they all fit together. And this is the big takeaway. Real, effective cybersecurity isn't a one-time project. It's a loop. It's a continuous cycle that just keeps reinforcing itself. The things you find in testing, they tell your daily operations team what to look for. And what you see in your operations, that tells you how to build stronger, better systems next time. Testing, operating, and building, over and over again. It never stops.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. Think about it. Your data, both personal and professional, is sitting inside thousands of these digital castles all over the world. So the real question you should be asking is, who's guarding it? Who is testing, watching, and building its security? Because really, your safety depends on their answer. Thanks for joining us.